Good afternoon. This is a lecture for Econ. I believe it is Econ Lecture 3. Hope things are going well with your home studies. We talked about monopolistic competition last time. That's where you have a number of firms, but not a very, very large number of firms, that have similar products in the market. So think about gas companies that sell gasoline, right? Then there is oligopoly, and that's our next topic. That's chapter 10.2. On my second edition, that's page 234. So please have your textbook out. You remember what oligopoly is? That is where a few firms make similar or identical products. And so it's just a few, 3, 4, 5 maybe, firms that produce all the products of that type on the market. Now, why do oligopolies exist? Well, there are barriers to entry that keep large numbers of competitors from coming in. For example, it might be government permitting. Think about the broadcast airwaves. Most of us are streaming music these days, but turn on your car radio dial and you'll see there are only a certain number of frequencies available. Well, back in the old days, when I was a kid, there were only a handful of TV stations in every major metropolitan area. I think we had 4 VHF channels in Dallas-Fort Worth and a few UHF channels when I was a little boy. And that was because of government permitting. The FCC licensed you to broadcast a TV signal. They had to do that. You couldn't have TV stations too closely together on the band because you only had 13 channels to choose from on the old TV. And so any more than 13 would certainly have meant there were too many TV stations for the TVs. But realistically, they often had to set them up in such a way that they were blank spaces on the dial so you didn't get bleed over in the signal. So only a certain number of TV stations in each TV market were permitted by government regulation, by FCC licensing laws. So that's a government permitting oligopoly, a handful of competitors in the market. There can be the sort of equivalent to natural monopoly. Remember how a natural monopoly developed, like Alcoa had all the ore to make aluminum, so no one else could make aluminum effectively. Well, you can have something like that if there is only a limited market for a product. Only so many people want it. People who do want it will buy it, but the people who don't want it won't buy it at all. So you have a very limited market for the product. Odds are a handful of firms will produce that product in quantity and meet that demand. A new startup wants to come in and join the market. Well, they've got the problem of the economies of scale already enjoyed by the existing original small number of competitors. The oligopoly that's there will essentially work to exclude other companies from coming in because they have all their barriers to entering the marketplace. They got to buy factories and equipment and all that stuff to even get up to begin to produce, to join the market. Well, everybody else is already just roaring along producing. So if there's not a very expandable market for that product, probably only a few companies are going to dominate it. Okay, I think that's enough on that. I don't think you need to go into more detail on that. 2 key concepts they introduce for you, though, in 10.2. Collusion and cartel. Collusion is where this small number of firms, these few firms of the oligopoly, band together by some kind of agreement to limit production and keep prices high. They have some kind of agreement among themselves about how much each will produce for the market, and maybe even express provisions about how much they will charge on the market. So the act of agreeing among themselves is the act of collusion. So anytime you band together, a small number of people get together for a criminal enterprise, that is collusion. In fact, it technically doesn't have to be collusion. But something that's immoral, you can collude to do that as well. In this case, because of our antitrust laws, this is illegal in the United States today, to have people that should be competitors in the market privately agreeing among themselves in ways that limit the market. Generally is not legal in the United States. The other key word, though, is the word cartel. This is where there is a formal organization of the colluding members. So if they go beyond just talking behind their hands, or informal chats on the phone in their collusion, and they make it more formal, a real organization, that organization is called a cartel. That's what they're doing there, is agreeing among themselves to limit production, keep price high, and that, of course, hurts consumers. Your book has a point on 235 where it says collusion versus cartel. How can I tell which is which? Which it says, in the United States, as well as in many other countries, it is illegal for firms to collude, since collusion is anti-competitive behavior, like I said, which is a violation of antitrust law. Very straightforward. Both the Antitrust Division of the Justice Department and the Federal Trade Commission have responsibilities for preventing collusion in the United States. So that's the Justice Department's Antitrust Division and the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. Those oversee our antitrust laws in the U.S. The problem of enforcement is finding hard evidence of collusion. Cartels are formal agreements to collude. Because cartel agreements provide evidence of collusion, they are rare in the United States. Seldom are people dumb enough inside the U.S. to put it in writing, to make a formal contract. But if they do, that's an illegal cartel. Where you might sometimes find this would be the mafia, the organized crime. Every once in a while, they actually put things in writing, but generally it's by tradition or by agreement that they just hold binding without writing it down. Most collusion, though, it says in there, is tacit. That actually means silent, where firms implicitly reach agreement that competition is bad for profits. So instead of having some formal agreement, they might be at a trade event, everybody of their industry is at some big convention, and they're having chats over martinis. This is where collusion really happens. It's not put down on paper. It's not a formal binding agreement. You couldn't go to court on these things anyway. They're illegal contracts. But it's just, might be wise if our industry had a little less production. Don't you think, John? And the executives informally agree. That kind of collusion is very hard to prove unless you got somebody around, an undercover cop with a mic on them recording these kind of conversations. It's hard to prove collusion. But it can be done sometimes. An email that's a little too explicit, something like that can come out. Okay. Now, pardon me. The big section here, the big thing in this section I'd like you to get is the prisoner's dilemma. The prisoner's dilemma is something economists often talk about. It's one of those things that life has in it. So it gets its name from two criminals had been part of a criminal conspiracy. They were planning on robbing a bank together. And they get arrested. The two criminals are arrested. They put the criminals in separate interrogation rooms. And separately, somebody comes to them and says, listen, if you will give us all the details and tell us what your friend did in the other room, if you fully cooperate and inform on your friend, we'll give you 1 year in prison. If you don't cooperate, we're going to give you the maximum penalty under law. We're going to go after you for 5 years. Now, they offer this 5 years in jail for non-cooperation, 1 year in jail for cooperation to both prisoners separately. They can't agree. I mean, they don't know that the other ones heard the same offer. They're totally separate. So they're sitting there thinking about this in their individual cells. Do I cooperate and rat out on my buddy to get a better sentence for myself or not? Now, in the prisoner's dilemma, you need to realize that they will probably both get somewhere in the middle if they cooperate with each other. Sorry, if they don't inform. If they don't inform and they'd say nothing whatsoever about this, the odds are they're going to get 3 years each in jail. So what do? If they say, okay, if neither of us says a word, we each go to jail for 3 years. If I inform on my buddy, he goes to jail for 5 years, I get out in 1. Do I inform on him? Well, if you both inform, then it's only the first one to inform gets the benefit of the deal. So that's the incentive, right, to inform right now. If I inform right now, I get 1 year, my buddy goes to prison. But they both have to be the first, or they don't get that agreement at all. So what do? Do they sit tight and say nothing? Logically, it might be best if they did, because neither of them risks going to jail for 5 years. They're both going to probably go to jail for 3, but neither goes up for the full 5. That means one of them doesn't get the benefit of the 1 year sentence, but they're both collectively better off if they say nothing. Both say nothing. But it has to be both of them. And that's the prisoner's dilemma. I don't know what my friend in the other cell is going to do. If he acts in his own personal best interest, he'll inform on me. If I act in my own personal best interest, I'll inform on him. But we're both collectively better off if neither of us says a word. Okay? Well, oligopoly has the same kind of thing. A collusion agreement between oligopolists benefits them in the market. But as your book points out, on the oligopoly version of The Prisoner's Dilemma on page 236, members of an oligopoly face a prisoner's dilemma also. Each oligopolist cooperates in holding down output. So we're all going to agree we're going to produce a lot less than we could for the market to keep prices high. So at this low price, I have to suppress my output. I could produce a lot more for the market, but I've agreed with my what would be competitors, my collusion cooperators. We're going to artificially produce less than we could for the market to keep prices high. So that's the agreement. Each oligopolist, however, must worry that while it is holding down output, other firms may be taking advantage of the high price by raising output and earning higher profits. So we suppress output, sends prices up. Okay, the market, people pay more when less stuff is available in the market, right? Supply and demand. Supply is low, prices are high. So we all agree we're going to suppress production, keep prices high. Got it? That's the collusion agreement. Suppress output, keep prices high. But every one of us could produce a lot more. And we could break the agreement secretly right now and produce a lot more for the market and start selling it at the higher price. We'll rake in the bucks, right? Because we're selling a lot more than our competitors are. They're keeping their supply in the market down to keep price up. I break the agreement, start selling a lot of my stuff at the higher price. Now, eventually that will bring the price down, right? But for a short time at least, that firm that breaks the agreement is going to make a lot more money, okay? So it says, each oligopolist, however, must worry that while it's holding down output, other firms are taking advantage of the high price by raising output and earning higher profits. And it shows in the table there. That's a duopoly. A duopoly, D-U-O-P-O-L-Y. Duopoly is two firms in a market. If firm A and firm B both agree to hold down output, they are acting together as a monopoly. So these two competitors, when they agree on price and production, it's as if they're one monopoly. So they can set the price. There's nobody else to set a price but them. And they'll earn $1,000 if they stick to the agreement each. Each earns $1,000 if they stick to the agreement. However, both firms' dominant strategy is to increase output, in which each source will earn $400 in profits. So if they each produced at their capacity, they'd only earn $400 in profits because the price would go down. Got it? So if A thinks that B will cheat on their agreement and increase output, then A will increase output. So if A thinks B is going to cheat, A is going to increase output to sort of cheat at the same time. If A thinks B will cooperate by holding price down, then A may seize the opportunity to earn higher profits by raising output. So A may break their agreement to make money on the higher prices. So that's the thing. They will both be better off collectively if they stick to their agreement. But each individually acting in their own self-interest will break the agreement, sell more at the higher price, and at least in the short term make more money. So there you have the prisoner's dilemma in oligopoly. Do I stick to the agreement, or do I look out strictly for myself? And what happens? Take care. Thanks.